Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, an international photographer turns his lens toward home.
Like a lot of people in my generation, I moved out of the area and then came back later. And when I came back in the 20-teens, what I saw was this place that I had known for so long was in many ways still the same.
After Hurricane Helene, whitewater rafting guides are adapting to diminished business and changed rivers.
You have to think of, all right, well, here's plan A, how we think and we want things to go. Here's plan B, if it doesn't really go this way. But then, oh crap, here's plan C, if plan A and B just got thrown out the window.
And we remember Travis Stimeling. The author, musician, and educator left a mark on mountain culture and the people who practice and document it.
They were my academic papa. I know that they played that role for a lot of other people. A lot of my close friends, we were all mentees of Travis at some point.
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for this program is brought to you by Solar Holler, helping Appalachian businesses and nonprofits manage energy costs through solar power. Information at solarholler.com. Support for this program is provided by the Thrasher Group, an architecture, engineering, and field services firm serving West Virginia clients and communities since 1983. More information at thethrashergroup.com.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Michael Snyder is a photographer and filmmaker who grew up in the Alleghania Mountains on the border of Maryland and West Virginia. His work has been featured in National Geographic, The Guardian, and The Washington Post. After living away from Appalachia for over a decade, Snyder moved back to document what changed and what stayed the same. The result is a new book. It's called Alleghania, a Central Appalachian Folklore Anthology. Associate producer Abby Neff recently spoke with Snyder.
Michael, can you describe a photograph for us that you think best represents your new book, Alleghania?
Yeah, gosh, this is such a hard question. There's so many images in this book that I love, and every one was a different little adventure that I got to go on for a day. So it's hard to choose. But I'll start with one. There's one that I just love, and it's titled The Farmers. I mean, it was a day spent on a small family farm right near the border of Western Maryland and Western Pennsylvania. And we got up early in the morning. I think we got up at 5, 6 in the morning, and we went out to pick apples in this orchard. And we were walking up in this field, and the grass is all overgrown, and there's dew everywhere. And it was just really, really quiet, like one of those quiet mountain Appalachian mornings. And we just sat there. We must have been there for a half an hour, just going along picking apples. And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And as a photographer, you just wait for these little moments to happen, and you kind of have them in your mind, but you hope that everything might line up. And it's just this photograph where all the pieces that I wanted, that, the little kids in the family, the mother, the dogs are all there, the apples and the dew, and it just all kind of lines up perfectly. And just really, for me, just captures this feeling of what it's like to be alive and be in the mountains in the morning in this place. So I think it's just a lovely, lovely little moment. So that's one of my very favorites. I'll give you one more. There's another one that is called The Swimmers, where it's about a swimming hole. And it's this picture, this portrait, more of a traditional portrait with a father and his two children in this swimming hole. And he's got a tire slung over his arm for a tire swing. And to me, I love this photo because, growing up country, I mean, that's what you did when you were a kid. You went out to the swimming hole. And so it's something that I have very strong memories about doing. And we got this sort of super masculine guy, he's big and he's buff and he's in the river, but it's such a sensitive photo. It's like he's just so gently carrying these kids, and the kids are so cute. And I think it really speaks to a lot of what I wanted to explore in this book, which is looking at identities and stereotypes, and then understanding that they exist for a reason, but also challenging them where that's reasonable.
Why did you want to create an anthology about Central Appalachia?
Well, like I said, this is home. I mean, this is where I grew up. And as a documentary storyteller, it's always wonderful to get to work on a project about a place that you love. So in a lot of ways, This is a love letter to where I'm from. But I think for me, it's a place that I grew up in and then I moved away from, like a lot of people in my generation. I moved out of the area for work and then came back later. And when I came back in the 20 teens, what I saw was this place that I had known for so long was in many ways still the same. A lot of what I had known as a kid was still there. But there are some things that were radically different and were changing really quickly. And I think probably in the last 20 years, this region, Appalachia broadly, and maybe more specifically, the Allegheny Highlands where I'm from, has probably arguably undergone one of the fastest changes in its history. We've seen highways come in, the internet come in, the global economy. So it's a place that is opening up very quickly to the world. The world is seeing it and it's seeing the world. And at the same time, it's one of the most, stereotypical traditional places in the United States. So I wanted to make a book that really explored that tension. How do we hold on to these identities and lifeways and traditions that are endemic to the region, are so personal to folks in Appalachia, but at the same time, make space for new things, right? And allow the things that we love to change and to evolve and to open up the dialogue for new identities and new people to come in. What does that process look like right now? And so that's the question that I brought into this book and really drove it by, rather than me trying to answer that question as one person, really trying to understand that through the perspectives of people that are from there. Right? Like a lot of what we hear about Appalachia comes from people on the outside, and you can do great work as an outsider. But I was really curious about what people from the place had to say about what that looks like.
Your past projects have taken you all over the world. How did creating Alleghania compare to those experiences?
My work as a documentary photographer is kind of split in half. It's like half of it is in far-flung regions around the planet. I've worked in the Arctic and I've worked in the Himalaya. I've been privileged enough to work in places like the Amazon and far corners of Australia. And then the other half is in Appalachia. I guess seemingly those are very, very different things. But I think the truth is what it looks like and feels like to do documentary work is really just to get access and permission and privilege to be in somebody's life for a day. And certainly whenever you're working in a place that's home, like that comes natural, right? Because you have more of that shared language and that shared identity and that shared culture to build off of. But still, fundamentally, it's about getting real trust and real permission to share a story of somebody who you don't know yet. Right. And so that's a challenge no matter where you work. And it's an adventure no matter where you work. So you really don't have to go around the planet to be on a great adventure as a storyteller. I see the work that I do in Appalachia is in many ways just as exciting and just as enriching as things that I've done elsewhere.
How does this project challenge the quote unquote stranger with the camera trope that seems to endure in Appalachia?
A place like Appalachia has, I think, been a curiosity to people for a long time because of its inaccessibility, because of its unique culture, because of how synonymous it is with American traditions and Appalachian traditions, and also because of the poverty and the hardship. And so, like, a lot of that is positive, I think, and really honorific of the region, but some of it less so. And I think particularly when you have folks on the outside that come there to sort of engage in poverty porn, right? To, just really look at what's negative and to go and try to capture that and be extractive and take that away for external entertainment. I think there's some real ethical questions, of course, about that. And, as a documentarian, I think as an outsider, it's very difficult to know what the right questions are to ask, who to speak to, who not to speak to, and so on. I will say that I do think there is excellent work done about any culture that can be done externally to it, right? Like it's not a given that if somebody is from a place, like they are going to tell something that is of high integrity and high quality and so on. So it isn't as simple as that. But certainly by being from a place, you've got a leg up on all of that. And the way that I try to do all of my projects, and especially this project, is to really be collaborative in the storytelling. Whenever I'm approaching folks to talk about various traditions, and this is a book fundamentally about traditions, right? What these traditions are and how they're changing and how they're staying the same. I start that as a dialogue with the people that I'm working with. You tell me where you think this conversation should go and what it should look like. And you help guide me towards what photo you think will be most representative, right? And so that's a little bit different than traditional photojournalism, where the idea is to be purely objective and to kind of drop in from the outside and capture something that's your unique voice, that is unobstructed. I think for me as a documentary photographer, somebody that does that in a way that I hope has a lot of reciprocity and community building built into it. I really want to do that with the communities that I work oftentimes say, like, whenever I make a project, hopefully I do make it for an international audience, but in a real way, it's made for the people that the project is about. And so I'm most excited to give this work back to the community, and whenever I have published this work in the past, or whenever I've done gallery shows and so on, the first place I want to bring it to is back to the community that I made it for. And I'll just kind of close my thinking here with one final idea. As I said, I'm a teacher now, and I teach documentary process. And one of the things that I consistently say is both the practice, then the process, and the output of documentary work should be relationship building, right? That's what the work is. It's building relationships, obviously, with the people that you're working with, but hopefully helping them to deepen their own relationship with themselves and the place that they know and they love. And of course, building bigger connections between the community that you're working with and the outside world. So I see myself as a photographer and a storyteller, but in a big way as a relationship builder as well.
Who should read this book?
Well, certainly my hope is that people in the region do. I think oftentimes as folks in Appalachia, the narrative that we have of ourselves is one that has come from the extraction economy. And that is a very negative narrative. It's a narrative that we're very monolithic in identity and we don't know how to take care of ourselves and we're poor and a little bit hopeless. And I think this book really challenges that. I think it challenges the stereotype that we're not a diverse place. There are, of course, ways that we are not, but diversity is an incredibly complex thing. There are so many ways that a culture can be diverse. And I think when you start pulling back the surface layers of this region, you find a place that is incredibly diverse. And so I hope people look at that and come to understand themselves in those terms. This is an old dialogue, but it seems to be something that is very much in the modern mind today, that there's so much that divides us. And maybe there's more that divides us than we can possibly overcome. And I just want people to really challenge that, because I think once you start talking to people, once you get beyond that outer shell of the politics that we wear or the color of our skin or identity or the region that we come from or whatever, there is truly profoundly far more that binds us and far more that we have in common, that we share. So I hope this book is a tool that continues that dialogue nationally, but especially in Appalachia, and continues to be in support of a force that brings us closer together and allows us to look at what we love and what we share in common.
Michael, thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really appreciate it.
It was great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
The book is Alleghania, a Central Appalachian folklore anthology. It's available from the Bitter Southerner. Hurricane Helene left a lasting mark on Central Appalachia and the rivers that run through it. The Nolichucky, the French Broad, and the Pigeon were home to a multi-million-dollar rafting industry. Seasonal whitewater river guides help tourists have fun and keep them safe. Helene has made that job less certain. BPR and Grist reporter Katie Myers reports.
Heather Ellis runs the Pigeon River multiple times per day, guiding tourists through the gorge over Class 3 and 4 rapids with a practiced ease.
And forward. And relax.
The river looks a little different than it used to, though. One side rises up into a beautiful forested mountain. The other side is a construction site for Interstate 40, not exactly scenic. Ellis is optimistic by nature, though. She says the tourists are nice about it.
But no one's been upset. They've all been very understanding. Shrubs and stuff will come back eventually, but, probably be a bit.
Helene caused extreme changes to rivers all over the region. Tourism is beginning to start up again, but some companies haven't reopened. As a result, river guides are still dealing with personal loss of income, and the fallout of abrupt life changes after Helene affected their work. Ellis admits the past few months haven't been easy. For starters, her house washed away. She's living in an RV in her company's parking lot. And after the storm, she had to navigate a whole new river.
I was very nervous taking my first trip down. It kind of made me feel like a rookie again because I had to read water. That's what we say it when we're just kind of seeing where the path needs to be, how we're going to navigate down the river.
This could become more common as climate change fuels extreme rain and intense storms that cause destructive flooding. Kevin Colburn, the executive director of Asheville-based National River Conservation Group American Whitewater, says the storm proved the outdoor industry is not as climate resilient as we might hope.
People do talk about Asheville being a climate refugia. For paddlers, we always say there's always next time. And this storm taught a whole bunch of us that that's not always true.
Revenue is down, Colburn says, even though many rivers have opened back up. Railroad construction on the Nolichucky, for instance, is making it hard for people to raft. Outdoor workers feel betrayed because construction has affected the river environmentally and kept guides from working. Trey Moore, a kayak guide, says it's frustrating because many river guides used their skills to help rescue their neighbors after the storm.
This community that stepped up so hard, that hiked in equipment and medicine to little old ladies in the mountains, that took handicapped kids across the river and got them on helicopters, brought in food, fuel, supplies to every community that was in need, is now just getting completely shut out.
Moore says he's hardly making money at all. Guided tours aren't allowed on the Nolichucky right now.
Yeah, we've lost so many guides to so many other rivers. The guides that are sticking around are struggling.
Leslie Beninato guided on the French Broad, but her place of work was washed away in September. She said she had never felt so uncertain.
It was just, oh God, what am I going to do now?
It turns out she found a place to use her skills in this new reality. Beninato now works with a debris removal crew that employs outdoor workers left unemployed after Helene.
But we have all a unique set of skills to offer. Several of us were raft guides at local outdoor companies that might no longer exist.
Beninato gets in her canoe and rows across a calm section of the French Broad. In the riverbank, netting, chunks of asphalt, and old metal are still tangled in the brush by the water. She yanks and twists some of it out, but decides to leave pieces that seem to be holding the riverbank together. Beninato is used to having to think quickly, both personally and out on the water.
You have to think of, all right, well, here's plan A, how we think and we want things to go. Here's plan B, if it doesn't really go this way. But then, oh crap, here's plan C, if plan A and B just got thrown out the window.
She's grateful for the job and for the camaraderie of her crew. She hopes more guides can get jobs in debris work to tide them over.
But if you still lost your job or are struggling, but your passion is to clean up this river, the banks of the river, you are maybe able to have an open mind and be willing to learn and maybe get on the water. So basically just empowering people through this job.
Even if guiding trips isn't a possibility for a while, she's pretty happy where she is. Like many other river guides who've remained, Beninato knows how quickly rivers and lives can change, and she's just going with the flow. I'm Katie Myers, BPR News.
Later in the show, the whitewater on the Gauley River is not just for boaters. We revisit a popular spot for surfers. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. West Virginia University professor Travis Stimeling carried the torch for bluegrass and traditional music in Appalachia. It was a shock when they died abruptly in November of 2023 at the age of 43. There was an outpouring of remembrances from colleagues, former students, and friends. Some shared their stories with Folkways reporter Zach Harold. In June of this year, Zach's remembrance of Travis Stimeling won an award from the Public Media Journalists Association.
Sophia Enriquez didn't know it at the time, but one music history class in her freshman year of college would change the entire direction of her life. It was 2013, and the music department at West Virginia University was looking to hire another professor. As part of the interview process, the university wanted finalists for the position to teach a sample lecture, a job talk in academic lingo.
So I was in the guinea pig class that they gave their job talk to.
And in walked Travis Stimeling, Stimeling had grown up playing guitar in church as a child in Buchanan, West Virginia. They then went on to study trombone in college. That eventually led to a Ph.D. in musicology from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a teaching gig at Millikan University in Illinois. Now Stimeling was looking to come back home.
They gave a job talk for a music history class and talked about country music and Taylor Swift, and that had everyone so excited. So yeah, that's how I met Travis.
Stimeling, who used they/them pronouns, got the job. It was the beginning of what would be an extremely fruitful period, both for Stimeling and WVU's music program. Over the next decade, Stimeling established Appalachian music and Appalachian studies minors at the university. They published reams of articles and a shelf full of books. That includes co-authoring the autobiography of legendary session musician Charlie McCoy and compiling a book of interviews with modern West Virginia songwriters.
Well, here in West Virginia, we have great songwriters too, right? And so part of the motivation for the book was to kind of push back against Texas and its claim to have songwriting just completely covered. Because I think we do a really good job there.
That's Stimeling in 2019, talking about the songwriter book with Elliot Parker of the Armstrong Neighborhood Channel. All these books and articles established Stimeling as a leading scholar in the study of traditional Appalachian music. But of course, Stimeling wasn't just a scholar. They were a musician. So in addition to their academic pursuits, they founded the WVU Bluegrass and Old Time Band.
There is a time for love and laughter. Days will pass like summer storms.
Enriquez joined the band in her junior year. Though she originally came to WVU to study orchestral trumpet, she caught the bluegrass bug from some friends.
I just walked right into Travis's office one day and said, I think I want to do this. And they said, okay, well, sing me something.
Enriquez didn't really consider herself a singer, but soon she was belting the old Flat and Scruggs tune, Rollin' in My Sweet Baby's Arms, with Stimeling backing her up on flat-top guitar.
And so then they're like, okay, you're in.
They say, have faith in Jesus, they say, have faith in...
That's Enriquez with a couple of her bandmates on a record Stimeling produced of songs by Wyoming County songwriter Shirley Stewart Burns. But Stimeling didn't just help Enriquez find her voice on stage. She was nearing the end of her undergrad, unsure what to do next. But one day Stimeling sat her down and laid out the options.
If you take this path, here's what I see. If you take this path, here's what I see. And then they said, but I don't think you realize that you would actually be really great at doing what I do.
Enriquez went on to earn a Ph.D. in ethnomusicology. On the day she received her doctorate, she also got a voicemail from Stimeling.
Dr. Enriquez, this is Dr. Stimeling calling on important doctor business. But really, congratulations. I'm just so dang proud of you. I thought I would call and wish it to you directly. Looking forward to celebrating with you next time we're together. Talk to you soon. Bye.
They always called me they were my academic papa. I know that they played that role for a lot of other people. A lot of my close friends, we were all mentees of Travis at some point.
Another of Stimeling's many academic youngins was Mary Lynchide. She grew up in Morgantown, West Virginia, the child of two classical musicians. Lynchide began studying classical violin at the age of 5, but she fell in love with old-time and bluegrass music as a tween. In 8th grade, she made a fateful trip to WVU's Mountain Lair Student Union to see the University Bluegrass Band perform.
So, graduated high school, applied to WVU. That's the only school I applied for because I knew I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be in the Bluegrass Band. That was like one of my top reasons for going.
Lynchide ended up in Stimeling's Appalachian Music and Appalachian Studies minors. She joined the Bluegrass Band. And like Enriquez, it was in that band that Lynchide found her voice.
Turned up like the leaves before the rain.
Travis actually got me singing. Like, before college, I would never sing, especially in public. Like, I went to church and everything. I lip sang. I would not sing. I don't know why, but maybe it was an insecurity thing, but Travis was like, if you're going to be in the Bluegrass Band, everybody has to sing.
She started writing songs, compiling enough to record her debut album in 2022. Stimeling produced that project and played and sang on several tracks.
I'll be here when the winter gets too cold. I'll be here when you're alone and you need a hand to hold. I'll be here.
And Travis was always my first listener, my first reader of anything.
Lynchad and Stimeling became close friends and bandmates outside the university, first performing in a square dance group together. They recently started playing gigs as a duo and had their first big performance last summer at Jerry Run Summer Theater in Webster County.
I'm so glad we got to do that. It was kind of like a last-minute thing because the band that they had scheduled canceled, and we were able to go down and do a duo show, which is like our first like real duo show. And Travis just seemed like they were finally free in their music and ready to like take off with that and go in a whole other direction with their life. And they were excited. They were really excited about this next phase of their life.
Stimeling and Lynchad were set to go into the studio to record a duet album, but ended up postponing the session at the last minute. Then, just a week later, Stimeling was gone. They died unexpectedly in their home on November 14th, 2023. Now, instead of recording an album, Lynchad was left to organize a memorial service. She knew she'd need to include Jenny Hawker on the set list for that memorial. Hawker is an expert in the old-time primitive Baptist style of singing, so Lynchad asked her to lead the crowd in Amazing Grace, sung in the old call-and-response style of the primitive Baptists.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Hawker doesn't remember exactly how she and Stimeling became friends.
I don't know. Our paths keep crossing.
Stimeling became fascinated by Hawker's style of singing, and the two were beginning a formal apprenticeship.
And we were going, I think it was December the 10th. We were supposed to go down to a Primitive Baptist church in Clay County and just listen.
As they dove into the repertoire of the Primitive Baptist Church, Hawker and Stimeling came to make a vow. Whichever of them died first, the other would sing the hymn, Dear Friends, Farewell, at the funeral.
Dear friends, farewell, I do you tell, since you and I must part. You go away and here I stay, but still we're joined in heart. You know, it's just, the words are just perfect.
Hawker didn't think about that promise as Lynchad was preparing the memorial service. She never imagined she'd have to keep her end of the bargain. She assumed it would be Stimeling singing at her funeral. But as she sat there, listening as the WVU Bluegrass Band finished up their set, with songs like Will the Circle Be Unbroken and other country classics that Stimeling loved, Hawker remembered, and she climbed back on stage, stepped to the mic, and kept her promise to her friend.
Dear friends, farewell, I do you tell, since you and I must part. I go away, and here you stay, but still we're joined in heart.
Friends at Appalachia, I'm Zach Harold.
Has been most free, your conversation sweet.
That story is part of our Folkways reporting project, which covers arts and culture in our region. You can find more at our website, wvpublic.org. Zach's story about Travis Stimeling won a first-place award from the Public Media Journalist Association in the Human Interest Feature category. Another story from West Virginia Public Broadcasting won second place for its use of sound. Last fall, Brianna Heaney reported on how the Gauley River has become a destination for surfers, even in landlocked West Virginia.
It's a crisp fall day, and the leaves are showing the early glimmers of red and yellow. Standing on a sandy beach, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, Andrew Wagner wears a wetsuit and holds a surfboard. He points to the canyon walls that surround this spot on the Gauley River called Diagonal Ledges.
No cell service out here, but it's gorgeous. Cliff walls, these beautiful sandstone cliff walls.
Other surfers stand on a narrow black rock ledge, holding their surfboards, waiting for their turn to surf.
You're standing there, you're looking at it, the whitewater is frothing, you're frothing.
Once it's the surfer's turn, they take one big leap. Holding the board to their body, they belly flop into the wave. A few seconds of furious paddling, and they slide into the little valley between two peaking waves.
Behind you, it's over your head, and in front of you, it's over your head. So you're down in this trough, and the water is coming to the top of the wave and breaking back down and crashing, and it's aerated and it's foamy, and that's kind of like holds you in there. But then you need to pop up. You need to get to your feet.
Get up in that classic surfing position. You know, arms out, feet wide. This is river surfing on the Gauley.
River surfing. Tis the season.
Starting in September, millions of gallons of water are released from Summersville Lake into the Gauley to help prepare the lake for winter. It's a great opportunity for rafters, kayakers, and surfers to enjoy the rare high flows of the river.
Lately, the scene's been pretty cool. Like, a lot of people have been getting into it.
Wagner says being in the wave is the best part, but it's also fun watching each other surf and feeling a part of that community.
You're out here with your friends, you're hearing the cheers of your friends. And that's like one of the most exciting, awesome parts about it is like being out here, sharing the stoke, and people rooting for you.
One of those cheering voices is Wagner's friend, Brian Bridgewater. Bridgewater started off as a climber, then met some whitewater kayakers and got into kayaking. Then, through that, met some river surfers and started river surfing.
I flopped and flailed around a whole lot my first year trying it.
Now, almost a decade later, he's an experienced river surfer. River surfing is a growing phenomenon. According to the National Geographic, it's one of the fastest growing sports in landlocked regions with powerful rivers. Here in Appalachia, where there's an abundance of whitewater, river surfing is really catching on. It's even got the attention of ocean surfers.
I've gone to the beach and they're like, oh, where do you live? Like, where do you normally surf at? And I'm like, oh, I live in West Virginia. And then they just give you an awkward stare. Oh, that's a landlocked state. Like, where do you normally surf at? And I'm like, on the rivers. And they're just like flabbergasted, to say the least. So,
A couple of landlocked surfers.
Yeah.
From Diagonal Ledges on the Gauley, I'm Brianna Heaney with West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
West Virginia. Yeah, West Virginia. Yeah. That's where it gets different.
That story won second place in the Use of Sound category at the Public Media Journalists Association Awards. Congratulations to Zach and Brianna. A rare Appalachian firefly lives in the forest outside Louisville, Kentucky. While the season for blue ghost fireflies was at its peak, Kentucky Public Radio's Sylvia Goodman visited the Bernheim Forest and Arboretum, a half-hour drive south of Louisville, to learn about the rare Appalachian lightning bug.
Right around sunset in Bernheim Forest and Arboretum in Claremont, the bird songs of the day slowly shifted to the throaty frog calls of the night. In the darkness, illuminated only by the nearly full moon above, Kelly Vowles and Bill Napper swung their nets. They were looking to catch a few of the rare blue ghost fireflies darting between the trees and across the trail in Bernheim Forest.
You got one?
Yeah, he's in my net. He stopped glowing. But he's in there. Oh, there he goes again.
These blue ghost fireflies are generally associated with the southern Appalachian region, but they've also found a home in Bernheim. Unlike the blinking yellowish light of the Big Dipper fireflies you might see in your backyard, blue ghosts leave their light on for several seconds. Vowels held up her net as the little beetle shone its ghostly light, and she shook out a plastic bag to hold him.
Oh man, he's really glowing.
He is glowing.
Like a happy one.
These fireflies glow a light bluish-green color that appears a kind of neon green on camera. While little is known about the blue ghost's population or their broader habitat, they've become a kind of tourist attraction in some places like North Carolina, and now Bernheim. Napper, a Bernheim volunteer who leads night tours through the forest, is helping collect specimens for a study out of the University of Georgia. Researchers are working to understand the genetics of Bernheim's blue ghosts and see if they're genetically the same as those found from Georgia up through North Carolina and Tennessee.
These are widely dispersed over a big area in the United States, and for all we know, there could be different species within what we all think is the same one.
Since these and other fireflies are understudied, it's hard to say whether they're in decline, but researchers say there are a lot of threats to them. Like many other firefly species, blue ghost fireflies are threatened by habitat degradation, light pollution, and climate change. And unlike some other fireflies, the blue ghost females never develop wings, instead sticking to the ground. Vowels, Bernheim's research coordinator, says the first step is knowing what they've got, which is trickier than you'd think.
The things I think a lot of people are trying to figure out is how can we start monitoring and telling whether or not the fireflies are in decline. It's really hard to survey for a firefly because it's hard to count when you have a bunch of them lighting up or none lighting up.
And fireflies are important predators, too, helping keep the bug ecosystem balanced. In their larval stage, fireflies are apparently voracious predators.
They like to eat everything. So they'll eat snails and anything else that they can catch. They're predatory.
Did you say snails?
Yes. They'll eat big stuff, bigger than them.
Napper first fell in love with the blue ghosts when he discovered them in Bernheim. As he looks out over the sea of little blue-green lights, Napper says they remind him of something supernatural.
Just little fairies lit up, flying through the forest, hovering 2-3 feet off the ground.
He worries about light pollution encroaching on their territory or torrential flooding washing them out. But this year, the little creatures came out in force. Last month, Napper captured Bernheim's first ever photo of a female blue ghost with all her glow spots visible. Vowell says it's remarkable that in a place founded in 1929, it's still possible to find something new.
Well, I always try to encourage anybody who wants to be a biologist, study insects. That is the area in which it is poorly studied, and you'll find lots and lots of things to learn. I'm still learning, and I will keep learning.
Bernheim is hosting a few more opportunities to view the blue ghosts and other firefly species until the end of the month and the close of their peak season. I'm Sylvia Goodman in Bernheim Forest.
That story was produced as part of the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, a collaboration between NPR and public radio stations in West Virginia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. More can be found at our website, wvpublic.org. "100 years ago, John Scopes taught evolution in a Dayton, Tennessee high school. A few months later, he was arrested, tried, and convicted of breaking the law in what became known as the Scopes Monkey Trial, a flashpoint in the debate on how to teach science in schools. To mark the centennial, the town is holding a special celebration. WPLN's Mary Mancini visited Dayton and brought this report.
While reporting on the Scopes trial in 1925, a journalist nicknamed Dayton, Tennessee, Monkeytown. 35 years later, Inherit the Wind portrayed the people of Dayton as overzealous Bible thumpers prone to marching in the streets with pitchforks and torches. Neither are accurate. both stuck.
It was nothing like Inherit the Wind. One of us has got to say it.
That's Tom Davis, vice president of the Ray County Heritage Preservation Foundation. The smell of fresh cut grass is in the air when I meet Tom on the sidewalk in front of the courthouse. On either side of the footpath that leads to the entrance are two bronze statues. On the left is fundamentalist Christian champion and Scopes prosecutor William Jennings Bryan. He is solemn in a crisp morning jacket and vest. Two of his more famous quotes are carved on the left and right side of the base, and his achievements are listed on the front. Presidential nominee, Secretary of State, congressman, Christian, statesman, author, orator. On the right is a jacketless Clarence Darrow wearing a rumpled shirt and suspenders. His brow is furrowed, his mouth open as if mid-sentence, and he points a finger at Bryan across the lawn. His pedestal simply reads, Clarence Darrow, attorney for the defense. We make our way to the Scopes Trial Museum in the basement of the courthouse. I've come here to learn the real story, and the museum delivers the goods. It's bright and neat with large photos of the main players next to text panels explaining the events, and some nifty artifacts.
The typewriter that the court reporter typed the transcript, a press pass signed by John Scopes, William Jennings Bryan, and Clarence Darrow, and we have a monkey doll, sheet music.
Monkey business down in Tennessee.
In 1925, the Tennessee state legislature passed the Butler Act, which made it illegal to teach any theory that denies the story of the divine creation, and instead teach that man descended from a lower order of animals. It was 4 years before the stock market crash of 1929, but Dayton was already in its own depression. George Rapelier, manager of the once booming Cumberland Coal and Iron, was looking for a way to bring some investment to the town. The ACLU, meanwhile, put an ad in the paper looking for a defendant to challenge the Butler Act and to take it all the way to the Tennessee Supreme Court.
George Rapelier saw the announcement from the American Civil Liberties Union, said, why don't we do it here?
Rapelier's idea caught on with the other town leaders. They just had to find a defendant. So they summoned John Scopes. Scopes said, if you can prove I taught it, I'll be your defendant. Once Darrow and Bryan got involved, it became an international sensation.
Over the course of the trial, telegraphers transmitted some 2 million words from Dayton. WGN Radio leased phone lines at a cost of something like $1,000 a day to broadcast the proceedings.
Ultimately, the jury convicted Scopes, and the judge gave him the minimum fine of $100. The case eventually made it to the Tennessee Supreme Court, where they overturned the conviction on a technicality. The Butler Act was repealed in 1967.
Remember the wisdom of Solomon in the book of Proverbs. He that troubleth his own house shall inherit the wind.
Hi. Mike Wilkie sits behind the counter at Down Home Outdoor Addiction, a firearms and hunting supply store on the main drag downtown.
It's an important part of the Dayton history. It's a pretty important event, and it's in this little town.
Religion is a topic we're told to avoid at dinner parties. And while some choose to wade in every now and then, Daytonians have been having this conversation in their homes, schools, and churches for 100 years. And they have their answers ready.
Do you have a personal opinion about creationism versus evolution?
Born and raised here. Obviously, I believe we came from Christ and we were created from God, but everyone's open to their own beliefs, and just because you think differently about something, that doesn't have any reason why we can't just agree and continue to live on, exist.
Well, I am a very strong creationist, but I do not believe that you should ever hide any kind of understanding about the nature of creation from anyone, and let good education help people make their decisions.
That story is from WPLN's Mary Mancini. A West Virginia researcher is working at the cutting edge of the study of psychedelics. Corinne Hazel is a West Virginia University microbiology student. This spring, she found a fungus that was barely more than a theory. It produces effects similar to the drug LSD and might have uses in treating depression, PTSD, and addiction. Producer Bill Lynch spoke with Hazel and her professor. Dan Panichone, about the discovery.
So, Ms. Hazel, when did you become interested in science?
Always been kind of interested in science. I grew up outdoors a lot, doing different sports and hiking. I was actually a really big fan of different like PBS kids shows that were like science oriented. So always had a good interest in science.
Tell me about your major and how you got into that.
I am an environmental microbiology major, so I get to take things like plant pathology, mycology, looking at different like bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms. I originally came in as an environmental soil and water science major, but I liked the environmental microbiology just because it's more biology.
With this kind of a field of study, what would you hope to do with it?
I am planning on a career in research, so going on to get a graduate degree and continuing in research.
Professor, tell me about your lab and what you were studying there or working on.
Okay, so in my lab, we study a group of chemicals called ergot alkaloids that are produced by fungi. These are small chemicals that only exceptional fungi produce, not your typical fungus, but there are, tens of fungi, 20, 30 that we know about that can make these chemicals. Often they make them in association with plants to protect the plant if the plant is a host for the fungus. So we were studying ergot alkaloids in morning glories, and people had known there was a fungus in morning glories that made ergot alkaloids, and that those ergot alkaloids are protective of the plants. And those alkaloids can also be used for pharmaceuticals. We were interested in how the alkaloids moved around the plant, and always looking for signs of the fungus, but never seeing it, and never really expecting to see it. But then one day we did encounter it, and we weren't sure we were right at first, but it began a series of experiments that ultimately led to us finding a new species.
This is almost like a detective story, kind of searching for clues or looking for little bits and pieces. So, Ms. Hazel, tell me a little bit about how you discovered this thing.
We had known there was a fungus there because of the ergot alkaloids, so we had some limited DNA sequences. So when we saw this fungus, we scooped it out of this little seed coat and put it on a petri dish plate to let it grow. And then we extracted DNA from that fungus and compared it to the sequences that we already had. And it was similar to the species of fungus that had been described in that genus.
So how exciting is it to find something that is basically the Bigfoot of the fungus world?
Super exciting. You don't want to get your hopes up too early on, but once you start getting more clues, everything's pointing that this is it, you're just I'm more motivated to do more experiments and get this published.
Now that you have this thing, what happens to it now?
So we've got it cultured in our lab. It doesn't make ergot alkaloids in culture, and it doesn't grow very fast, so we could look at better culture methods for that. Another thing is the genes that it uses to produce ergot alkaloids are very efficient, makes a lot of ergot alkaloids. So the genome sequences that we've made are good genetic resources for producing ergot alkaloids in another model organism.
So the parts of it may be more valuable than the fungus as a whole.
How come no one else stumbled across it till now?
We have a lot better molecular tools. We got a lot better technology now than we did. A big part, you have to really find this molecularly because it doesn't grow outside of the plant. If you didn't know the chemicals were there, then you wouldn't think that there's a fungus in this plant.
Even though we know it's there, when we go back in and dissect out plants, it's really hard to find it. We honestly, visually see it in the plants is very rare. Very hard. So we know it exists. We know what it looks like. When we dig apart plants and tease them apart, it's hard to see it. We can see it using DNA techniques. And now, of course, Corinne has it growing in a culture, so we can see it there.
What happens next with you? You've got a year left in school as your undergrad. And Professor, you've got your lab and your studies to continue. So where do you go from here?
I'm working on writing up the original project that I was actually working on. The reason I was growing morning glories in the first place was for another project based on how they move the ergot alkaloids throughout the plant and into like the area surrounding the roots. So working on finishing up that project.
I will continue to look for new and interesting fungi that make ergot. This was actually the first new species of fungus I have found. I have found fungi that people knew the organism existed, but then I found the ergot alkaloids. That's an exciting finding for me. This is the first time I have found a brand new species. So I will continue to try to learn where the ergot alkaloid fungi live and how the ergot alkaloids help the fungi and help the plants that the fungi are associated with.
That was WVU Professor Daniel Panachone and upcoming WVU senior Corinne Hazel speaking with Bill Lynch. Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Eric Huey Vincent, Mary Hott, John Blissard, Blue Dot Sessions, Paul Loomis, and Hello June. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Chris Julin. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/InsideAppalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.